I've had a long career in teaching, longer than most, and it has been a journey of self-discovery just as much as a career journey. I take great satisfaction in this journey because I basically returned to my family roots, you could say, and I feel so comfortable working with groups of teachers and parents to pass on this emotion-focused approach to understanding the needs of children and teens. I was quite well prepared early in my life for the noise and happy chaos of schools and classrooms because I come from a large family. I practically raised my younger brothers and little sisters, so I knew how to manage children's feelings and keep them interested. And also, I made my first $1 million by babysitting for the neighbors. So it was natural that my second million would come from teaching. However, instead of the warm and fuzzy relationships with kids that I knew, teacher training introduced me to a whole other culture of behavior management, motivation, discipline, and curriculum. So it used to be, it used to feel bad. I mean, it felt like a clash of cultures because teacher training at that time was hyper-focused on behavior methods, which tended to pressure kids with consequences to behave and learn at the same pace, or they would fail the grade. This actually damaged relationships with kids and nudged out creative teaching ideas. Classrooms were still organized in rows of desks and the strap was still used. So frustrated principals were allowed to hit children. And there were crazy ideas like new schools were built with no windows, or the windows were so high up on the wall, so kids couldn't look out and daydream. New classrooms had no walls, which was supposed to facilitate team teaching. But it was more likely a budget tightening measure because, how many classrooms do you see now with no walls? Didn't catch on. I was a special education teacher, so students coming to me were taken out of regular classrooms and put into smaller groups with more time and attention to meet their needs. So I was able to dodge a lot of these so-called innovations. And I would never send kids to the office for fear they would be strapped. Instead, I was in constant communication with their parents to keep kids in line. So I could bypass curriculum somewhat because these kids were, not keeping up with the pace of learning. And I could follow student interests and even use my own creativity. So it was good. I was kind of hiding in these special ed classrooms over the years. But it all started to change. In 1997, there was a most encouraging change for me. I was beginning to do coursework for a school psychology degree, so I attended the annual psychologist conference as a student and registered for a session called Understanding Aggression by Dr. Gordon Neufeld of Vancouver. He painted an entirely new landscape for me to see how emotions developed in a very natural process of attachment with responsive caregivers. I already knew this in my bones. And I laughed at his statement that preschoolers are the most violent human beings, explaining how tantrums are actually natural and pretty much necessary for emotional growth. But this was just the beginning, because tantrums and aggression are part of a much larger landscape of attachment dynamics. So this turning point led me to my thesis topic for my degree program. I wrote a thesis called Adolescent Attachment and Anxiety. And it defined a new direction in school administration for me. I was exploring the link between attachment and mental health and activating ideas like a mentorship model for individual program plans and also curriculum mapping for teens so that they could see where they were themselves in the curriculum outcomes they were supposed to tackle. But back to today. Today, the term attachment is just catching on. It hasn't managed to replace the old view of child behavior, though, not in schools. And even though attachment is recognized across many professions internationally as the most comprehensive account of child development, caregiver relationships, and personality development with long-term effects on social adjustment in life, emotion regulation, and even couples relationships and mental health. It still hasn't really been adopted like this in schools. European cultures have been much quicker to adopt attachment approaches. but still underutilized in schools in North America. So I continue to speak to educators and parents whenever I can about the wisdom of attachment and the emotion-focused framework that it provides.